from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
I know in the last episode I said that Attack of the Clones was my favorite prequel. However, most people's favorite prequel, almost everybody's favorite prequel is today's topic of discussion. Yes, we are talking May 19, 2005, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And yes, I was holding it backwards the whole time. Yes, I still have my DVD copy of it. I hold this like Trump held the Bible, except this actually means something to me. Also, DVDs were just so much cooler back then, too. Like, I always rewatch the movie, and then I watch the movie with director's commentary after, and you learn so much about the movie, especially just hearing George Lucas, just from the horse's mouth, hearing the visions that he had for this movie. Things like how he didn't want the Darth Plagueis conversation to be just another conversation that took place in Palpatine's office, so he created this idea of just space opera and worked his designers to death to get him to do it. Like, just hearing little things like that, or hearing that that's not really Anakin's hand when they fall down the elevator shaft, that's actually, I think, Rick McCallum, producer of Star Wars, that's his hand using stunt double stuff. Because in movies, they're not, you have Hayden Christensen sit there for 6 hours while they're setting up a shot just to have him grab the rope's hand. No, it's a gauntlet. You can have anybody. But like, first of all, this was a DVD I fell asleep to when I was a kid, probably up until, actually this week I was falling asleep to it. This is back when DVDs had menus, okay? You would just be dead in sleep, and in the middle of the night you'd see Palpatine behind his desk looking at Death Star plans, and you'd see a list of features that you could choose from. Then there was a second disc, where I got to see a bunch of never-before-seen deleted scenes. There's a whole full-length documentary called Within a Minute that shows you the most in-depth ever filmmaking process to making a Star Wars movie. There's just all kinds of cool stuff. The theatrical trailer, oh my God. The theatrical trailer for this movie was one that I remember downloading on LimeWire. I gave my computer AIDS to watch this trailer because this movie was the end. That's how it was marketed in so many different ways. This was the final part in the trilogy. We knew this movie had to end somehow with Anakin falling into a vat of fire that was going to make him Darth Vader. This movie had to show you how Luke ended up on Tatooine and Leia got to be a princess. And as a result of a lot of people, well, if you were a fan, you were pretty much knowing how this movie was going to end. Although I'm not even going to lie, there was discourse, if anyone remembers. Sorry, I keep fixing my Jedi robes. They're just boom, boom, and boom. Okay. There was just this, the one right theory I remember more than anything else is there was this weird sect of online fans who said Palpatine wasn't Palpatine and that he wasn't Darth Sidious. This is a whole weird time to be a Star Wars fan. But like generally, you knew where this story was going to end up. It was going to end up with all of the parts that A New Hope starts with and maybe fill in that 20-year gap in between, which it really didn't do. That's kind of what Rebels did. But everybody knew how the story was going to end in this sense, right? Like, we all knew Anakin was going to be bad, even though every time I watch the movie, I kind of hope at the last minute he doesn't turn to the dark side, which eventually, of course, he did. So that they released the book and the game before the movie came out, and I think really underestimated the patience of a 10-year-old child like me who had no friends, and now I have the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, which you should read because it does provide, like the scene where Palpatine murks 4 Jedi Masters. Apparently he's going at such a speed that the Jedi couldn't even see him coming, so it would make it a little more explainable, but in reality it's because Ian McDiarmid wanted to do a lightsaber battle scene. And the game actually had an alternate ending where Anakin does make the jump over Obi-Wan because he's wearing his Nike Airs and stabs Obi-Wan, kills him, then he kills the Emperor, and it's his empire. Happily ever after, unless your name is Sheev. Revenge of the Sith is probably the most aggressive Star Wars title they have, but what are the Sith getting revenge over? That's a good question. Could be over a bunch of different things. You see, the Sith had to sort of live in hiding after the Rule of Two was created, because from what I understand, Darth Bane created the Rule of Two because he thought too many dark side wielders on one side was going to stump their progress, and they're never going to be able to have any kind of formation of real power like the Jedi do. So he ambushed them all and then took on his own apprentice, one to crave the power and one to teach it. So for a millennia, according to Ki-Adi-Mundi in Phantom Menace, the Sith have been in hiding. And I guess this is their revenge for having to be sort of closeted while the Jedi get to frolic and start off as something that serves the Republic, but ends up being something that is bureaucratic. And Palpatine had planned this all. In the Clone Wars, there's an episode where they finally capture Grievous, and of all people, it was the Gungans who did it. And Anakin and Dooku face off, and Dooku goes, "Oh, how soon one forgets the war started here 10 years ago." And Anakin goes, "You were here when the Battle of Naboo happened? The Sith control everything. You just don't know it." This was part of his grand plan. And now, with a few snags in the middle, lightning to the face, losing a couple of your number twos, Anakin losing a couple of arms and legs and a hand, his grand plan actually does essentially come to fruition. And, you know, before I get ahead of myself, let's just do a scene-by-scene breakdown of this movie. So, of course, we get the opening crawl. War! Very 1930s. That's how George Lucas likes his crawl, those old movies. And it's a great way. It's very hard to do exposition in sci-fi when it's on camera because there's just a lot of criticism that you get in the prequels. Chin-stroking Jedi, sitting, talking, sitting, talking, sitting, talking. This movie sort of took all the criticism Attack of the Clones got and just made it action. Like, there's no dialogue in the first probably 3 minutes of this intro because it's showing you, yes, we're in the middle of a war. It's not technically deep space either. It's not like any of the space battles we've seen in Star Wars, like the Battle of Endor or the Death Star run, or even in the prequels. I don't think there was a space battle between Qui-Gon and Jango Fett. It was more like a cat and mouse chase. This space battle is sort of happening in the mid-tier between space and atmosphere over Coruscant. So it allows for some really cool debris, some really cool smoke, some George Lucas decides the rules when he decides them. So if he wants there to be noise in space, there's going to be noise in space. And the best thing to me about this scene is the in-syncness of Anakin and Obi-Wan, because you immediately know it's them when you see the dual fighters chasing down a Venator. Actually, that's the first shot we see in the movie, is a Venator Star Destroyer, which, as I talked about in the last episode, the Jedi have become so intertwined and in many ways a puppet of Palpatine's bureaucracy that they don't even realize that they're more military than they are keepers of the peace, which is what their involvement in the Republic was supposed to be in the first place. They are believers in democracy. But we see the Venator, we see Anakin and Obi-Wan in sync fly over it, and also we see how much the Clone Wars have matured Anakin at this point, right? Like, we saw them butt heads. He still looked at him like a master and a brother in Attack of the Clones, but they butt a lot of heads, and Anakin didn't really respect him. Now, 3 years into a war, Anakin's got longer hair, probably to make it more sad when he loses it. But Anakin respects Obi-Wan's decisions because they're both generals and they both lost a lot during this war. And Anakin, not for nothing, just got off the phone with Ahsoka. Now, we know that. We didn't know that then. He just got off the phone with Ahsoka, who was pleading for some Republic troops to be sent to the Siege of Mandalore to stop Darth Maul. So he's going through a lot, and now he's just got to snap back into battle mode. And we also see the difference in command between Anakin and Obi-Wan, right? Like, the clones are in trouble. Anakin, the general, immediately goes, "I'm going to break formation and help them out." And Obi-Wan goes, "No, don't. They're doing their job. We can do ours." Shows you the difference of attachment philosophies the two have, right? A lot of people say that Anakin, or Darth Vader, hired Boba Fett because he missed the sound of clones' voices that he heard during the Clone Wars. And he's extremely sentimental and attached to them. Obi-Wan, not so much. Obi-Wan doesn't even remember owning a droid by the time he sees R2 in A New Hope. But this is, again, what Anakin's problem will be throughout this movie. But Anakin and Obi-Wan are piloting their ships through this huge, massive battle over Coruscant to Grievous's flagship, the Invisible Hand. Now, in the Clone Wars, that's no longer canon anymore. We see Grievous kidnapped Palpatine. And I guess Shock T too, if one of the deleted scenes of her death being stabbed by Anakin through the stomach during the temple raid is to be believed. But an Ithorian, whose name I don't remember, one of the dudes who was in the Mos Eisley canteen, he was there, and Shock T were all bodyguarding Grievous when Grievous kidnapped him. And a clone trooper straight up just shot a rocket launcher in an elevator too. Weird. I just remember that. And that Clone Wars show explains why Grievous coughs. Because Mace Windu tries to stop him, but he can't grab him in time, so he just collapses his lungs and sounds the way he does. He gets sickly, and then... and because Grievous jeweled. Once they get aboard the Invisible Hand, which is just a rough name for... Oh my god, the Invisible Hand, because Anakin loses his... Just got it. Wow. The Anakin and Obi-Wan, even the way that... Where did I put my notes for this? Because I missed the first 2 pages of my notes. I don't know where I put them. I've just traveled a lot, and they're gone. So here's some of the ones that I've got written down. The 2 Jedi board the... They navigate the ship's defenses. The 2 Jedi board Anakin and Obi-Wan board the Invisible Hand and fight through the battle droids, making their way to Palpatine. Now, even the way Obi-Wan gets out of the ship versus Anakin getting out of the ship sort of foreshadows the ending, right? Like, Obi-Wan got them hops, flies out effortlessly, unlike how I said that word, jumps out, turns them into butter, and then it's just pew, pew, pew. Anakin's all about click it or ticket. He's got to get his seatbelt off, and it's just, sensei versus the sensei. Once they get aboard the ship, they send R2 to do some continuous bitch work. Some of the funniest scenes in the movie are RT dousing them in oil and committing droid violence. The confrontation with Count Dooku when Anakin and Obi-Wan, they see Palpatine. Obi-Wan consistently gets the talk shit, get hit lesson with the Chancellor Palpatine. Sith Lords are our specialty. My brother, I don't think you know how specialties work, because that mean the thing you best at. And I've seen you get dog walked by this dude several times. But that could also be at Palpatine's orders. I always felt that Palpatine tried so hard to kill Obi-Wan because he knew Anakin's attachment to Obi-Wan. And yes, there's theories that Palpatine was responsible for placing those dreams in Anakin's head to further manipulate him into being susceptible to the dark side. But he loves Obi-Wan just as much, and 2 deaths are greater than 1, and the Sith derive their strength from their pain, and he wants Anakin as painful as he can. He tries to get him killed several times, both in the duel and tries to get him left behind on the Death Star. But when Anakin, Dooku, and Obi-Wan face off, it's a very interesting fight this time around versus the Clone Wars, right? Like, because in Attack of the Clones, Anakin was arrogant and he charged right at Dooku, and we find out Anakin's allergic to electricity. In this one, Anakin says, this time we'll do it together, and my powers have doubled since the last time we met. Although, if you count Clone Wars continuity, that was like last week, dog. So what did you do? Do steroids? But I know. I'm just happy there's more Star Wars. I'm sorry, I was trying to be... My light is falling because I was being realistic in a sci-fi setting. Oh no. Why I think this lightsaber fight is so interesting is because Dooku taught Qui-Gon, who taught Obi-Wan. So he's easy. Maybe Palpatine didn't explicitly... By the way, in the book, if I remember correctly, Dooku's in the room with Palpatine like 5 minutes before Anakin and Obi-Wan show up, further gaslighting him. And Dooku at this point thinks, yeah, I'm going to be the one to do the double cross on you, and when this war is over, I'm going to be sitting at the throne of a separatist empire. And that's why he looks so dumbfounded at the end when Palpatine tells him to kill him, because he realizes, oh, I've been a fool this whole time. How did I not see it? I betrayed everything I knew and loved just to be another pawn in the game. All that aside, the lightsaber fighting style Obi-Wan uses, Dooku knows like the back of his hand. Right? He even said in Attack of the Clones, Master Kenobi, you disappoint me. You to hold you at such high esteem. Because he taught Qui-Gon. So, because he taught Qui-Gon. So, by extension, he would know Obi-Wan's moves. That's why he's unfamiliar with Anakin's moves here, right? He was able to take him out as a Padawan because he was a young, arrogant Padawan. Here, Anakin has had the maturity of the war and teaching his own student, so his power truly is unmatched and unlike anything they've ever seen before, which Dooku senses. He says, you have great fear, you have great anger, you don't use them, and Anakin's like, watch what happens when I do. And he tries the same move on Dooku. He successfully executes a move on Dooku with the lightsaber over the two hands that gets him on his knees, and he tries that again with Obi-Wan during the Duel of the Fates. So that's why Obi-Wan, it's easy to clown Obi-Wan because like, oh, you just talked all that shit and you got thrown into a wall and you got a wall, a bridge, a floor forced onto you so you can't move. Not use, can't leave. Bronx Tale reference. Go back to your drinks. And that's why he's sort of taken aback by Anakin, right? Like Anakin, he's fought a bunch during the Clone Wars, but Anakin is the most powerful Force user around right now, and he's aggressive, and he's not exactly following the Jedi Code to a T. In fact, I would argue that he consistently brings up the Jedi Code because it's something that he does struggle with, and it's something, it's like why people love religion. It's the one thing he has to behold to, even though he struggles at it. The difference between him in Attack of the Clones and the difference between him in Revenge of the Sith is we actually see him adhering to the Jedi Code here, or at least trying to, until he has a literal devil on his shoulder telling him to do it. I shouldn't do it. It was too dangerous to be left alive. Remember what you told me about your mother and the Sand people? I told you not to use those words anymore. And even there was also theories that Palpatine paid Dooku to kill the Sand people to further help turn Anakin to the dark side. And even when they're leaving, Palpatine's trying to get Anakin to leave him. He literally says, leave him or we'll never make it. And Annie goes, he's the Obi-Wan for me. And they leave down a shaft, elevator shaft. No space genitals. And also you have to know, Palpatine knows what Anakin did to the Sand people. No one on the council, save for Yoda, because he has that strong connection to Anakin and the Force. Because Qui-Gon, we know through, if you watch the Clone Wars, Qui-Gon reached out to Yoda, and Qui-Gon tried talking to him in Attack of the Clones, didn't work, and Yoda heard it, and there's just a connection Yoda has with Anakin because Qui-Gon is in heaven being like, ooh, sorry, remember that whole, you won't be a problem, Annie? I may have dropped the ball on that one. But, bottom line, Palpatine knows Anakin did something he should not have done, which is Groomer 101. I know something, and we won't tell the adults because it'll get us in trouble, but you can trust me and only me. Come with me, I'll help you out. That's sort of Palpatine's whole MO at this point. He's waited 20 years! After the trio, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Palpatine, well, the Obi-Wan dummy is on Anakin's back, and they're trying to get off the ship. They get trapped in a Rey Palpatine shield, and then we finally meet General Grievous, who... Come on, I wrote a note. I wanted to make sure I had this down. Ah, here we go. Okay. All of the villains in the prequel trilogy are supposed to be form of them is supposed to be reminiscent of what Anakin is going to turn into. Darth Maul loses his legs. Count Dooku, Fallen Jedi. And Grievous is sort of this sickly creature that wasn't fully working. At the time, the only origin we had to go off of Grievous was from Star Wars Visionaries, and he got shot down. He was a Keelish warrior who got shot down by Dooku and then sent to Geonosis, and the Kara's Guild banking clan oversaw his rehabilitation, blood transfused him with Cypher Dyas' blood, I believe, and Dooku told him it was the Jedi, so that would explain Grievous's hate for the Jedi. Even in the Clone Wars, he has a very, very big moment where he's like, my only goal is to see all Jedi die. The point of Grievous is essentially Dooku needed someone to run the droid army. He was out busy doing separatist shit. And I played Grievous. There was a bunch of auditions for Grievous. It was supposed to be Gary Oldman at one point. I think he was doing Batman Begins, so he couldn't have done it. I think Grievous was also supposed to be a child in a wheel, just a floating chair. And then Doug Chang eventually had one of the Grievous's bodyguards were what Grievous was supposed to look like. But then Doug Chang looked at a spray bottle, drew up a design, and that presented it to George, and that became what they used for General Grievous. And the voice of him, they went through all these audition tapes, and the guy who submitted went under the name Alan Smithy, which, little movie trivia for you. Alan Smithy is a name people use when they don't want their real name in a movie or a TV show. And it turned out to be a guy named Matthew Wood, who was an ADR and sound engineer at Lucasfilm. And he's the voice of Grievous and the voice of the Battle Droids in the Clone Wars show. Also, George Lucas, when they were casting, had bronchitis or something, really bad cough. So those coughs you hear are George Lucas's coughs mixed in with a bunch of other sound effects, I'm sure. But like, it's beautiful to have a little piece of George in the movie. He's also a Pantoran when Anakin's running up in the opera scene before the Darth Plagueis scene. If you look to the left of your screen, you'll see two blue people talking. One of them's George, one of them's his daughter. That's neither here nor there. Let me stick to my notes, please. The Sacred Jedi text. Oh, that was it I had for... Yeah, well, we just needed to know he was in that suit for a reason, though this movie doesn't tell us what reason that is. We could tell he's kind of a sleazy coward. Grievous is very impatient, and he doesn't like waiting. They get off planet. Grievous escapes because he's a little tiny bitch. They get down to Coruscant, and Obi-Wan's sort of like, Anakin, you take the W for this one. It's been a few months since I've... seen something from a certain point of view, if you know what I mean. You go chill. We get the only scene of Anakin talking to his daughter's future adoptive father, Bail Organa. And then we also see Padme, after the mission statement was clear that as long as General Grievous is alive, the war's going to continue. So Palpatine has two jobs. Keep Grievous alive and don't let the Jedi kill him. We see Padme. She obviously looks like Leia, but very different. You know, like Leia had this sort of Mexican Spanish revolutionary vibe to her. Her dress is almost of a poncho. Padme here is very regal. She's a senator. She is wearing her hair in Leia's style, but Padme is essentially the start of the rebellion. And for everybody who says Hayden Christensen's a shitty actor, I want you to pay attention to the emotion that he shows in his face when Padme tells him that she's pregnant, because he goes through every emotion a human being would go through in a situation like this. And I am so glad he's getting the flowers that he's getting now. And now he has another thing to be terrified of losing. Rather than the earmuff motif, so it's referred to as, we have the Hopi engine Padme Amidala style, who totally gets nerfed in this movie. She spent the last movie with a gun fighting off intergalactic wars. This one, she's just pregnant and sad, which, I mean, she's pregnant, so she shouldn't be fighting in any wars, but she's a Kyle Rayner fridging. Fridging is a term used in comics when a woman is just used as her loss and whole existence. And when she dies, it just is used to serve male character development. And I guess she had two really badass movies prior to this and a lot of great Clone Wars episodes. And she sort of had to be this character to show why Anakin would turn. But it is kind of sad because I miss like how fucking cool Padme was. But that's when Anakin's nightmares begin. And in Anakin's nightmares, he has visions of Padme dying in childbirth, and it disturbs him extremely deeply. And that brings us to Padme's veranda. Veranda? I don't know how to say that word. I've only written it. I've never heard it. But George did this great thing, and the design team did this great thing of, if you saw this set before, you thought that's all there was to it. Guess what? Here's more. So in Attack of the Clones, we saw what we thought was Padme's closet, but it expands into this veranda, and that's where Anakin goes to sit, so his woman don't hear him crying. Because we got... Tough, fellas. It ain't gangster to cry. I lost an arm, I didn't cry. One dream about my mommy? Weep, weep, motherfucker. Part of the movie could be overlooked very easily, but it's essentially the entire crux of what this movie is about. Anakin's loss, fear of losing Padme, and this conversation that they have about her dying in childbirth, and it obviously mirrors the fears he had for his mother. Was Palpatine planting these seeds in his head to further him closer to the dark side? All are very plausible things to think about. But we know for a fact that Anakin's fear, there's two things at play. There's fear with Anakin and there's greed with Palpatine, right? Like Palpatine is greedy because he wants more power. That's his whole game. He wants more power. He doesn't give a fuck where it comes from. He just wants more power. And Anakin wants the power and is afraid that he's not powerful enough to save the ones he loves from dying though it is a natural part of life, and that's why the path to the dark side is unnatural, as Palpatine would call it, because he just can't let go. Palpatine has this opportunity to teach Anakin said unnatural powers, but and he takes the bait because he's afraid he can't save, and he's not powerful enough, and because he thinks the Jedi are holding back from him. And Palpatine goes, "Oh, I got a plan for that, motherfucker. Jedi giving you a problem? Got you. I could teach you what the Jedi aren't teaching you." And then Anakin takes that bait because they put him on the council and don't make him a master, and that just further drives in his distrust of the council and confides more in Palpatine. There's even a deleted scene between Anakin, Padme, and Palpatine where Padme is pleading to Palpatine about ending the war, and Palpatine knows about Anakin and Padme, but he even says to Anakin, she's not to be trusted, and he goes, "Surely you're mistaken," and he goes, "Don't trust her, Anakin. She's sincere," and that's just what groomers do. They plant seeds of mistrust to the people around them, so the only person you can trust is them. After this, we start to see Palpatine's influence, and because Anakin's scared, and Palpatine has a connection to him in the Force, and Palpatine's this all-seeing whatever guy, we see his influence, and Palpatine speaks to Anakin about the Jedi Council, which slowly sows the seeds of mistrust in Anakin, an already vulnerable Jedi-sidal war hero. And because of this distrust, Palpatine sees opportunity to create further conflict and put Anakin as his representative on the Jedi Council, because he knows the Jedi aren't going to like that, and he knows Anakin wants to be a master and that they're not going to give it to him. And in this frustration, it'll be easier for him to pull me back in. And when they're on this meeting, the Jedi are discussing the war. Anakin's placed on the council, not granted master, because he's really only there to spy on Palpatine. And this furthers Anakin's frustration, right? Like, Anakin's angered. He's humiliated by the council's decision, feeling like they don't trust him. I just fought this whole war for you for 3 years. What the hell? Why won't you give this to me? He's young and impatient. That's his problem. Anakin does confide in Yoda because, like I said, there is that special connection in the Force they have through Qui-Gon. And Yoda gives Anakin what I consider to be pretty shitty advice. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. My God, is that horrible advice to a kid who has lost everything, and you are training him in an institution that doesn't teach anything about emotions or feelings, but there's 4 different kinds of lightsaber combat, so I can't tell you how to give a hug, but I could tell you how to cut someone down like butter. For defense, not for knowledge or attack. Right, Yoda? Cut to Attack of the Clones fight scene. Yoda also has a relationship with the Wookiees that's good for some reason. I have no idea why. He's 800 years old. He probably tried some freaky stuff in his age. I have good relations with the Wookiees too, Yoda. Just ask any of my exes who are watching this. We find out that Palpatine thinks Grievous is on Utapau because a partial message was intercepted by the chairman of Utapau, and Anakin is pushing that he go because the Chancellor requested it. Jedi Council don't like that, so they say Yoda just really digs the knife in and goes, "A master is needed with more experience." He also has a slip-up where he goes, "The capture of General Grievous." Like, what? Can we do a re-record on that, Oz? No, I think we're good.
Use the Force, we must. Count to 10, Yoda can. Pull, whoop-de-whoop and pull. Looking good, shoes are.
After they have this giant council meeting, Anakin is pissed and finds out that he's really only there so they could have to spy on the Chancellor, and all of a sudden he cares about the Jedi Code. But again, it's sanctimonious. It's like when a Republican says that they hate gays and they get caught jerking off a death stick in a men's bathroom. You know, like every accusation is a confession. So or Anakin's just like, what the hell? I'm struggling to follow this code, and you guys are just laissez-faire about it. And Obi-Wan is like, we're in a war, so it's okay to bend some rules, because I guess Obi-Wan read one of Dick Cheney's books. I don't know. Okay, I'll be honest. I thought I could do this whole episode in the beard. I truly can't. It's coming off. 1 second. Okay. All right, we're back. We are back. Do I hood? No hood? I don't know. All right, so this is my Chancellor look. It's regal. It's got pads. Do I have pads? Am I slaying? I've got a good Chancellor background. I just love Palpatine's office, man. I want It's so bad, but I don't know if I have the power to save the ones I love. I don't even talk to people I know at the grocery store. Anyway, Anakin's turn starts to become a reality in Palpatine's mind, at least, when he's telling Anakin the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, because he literally has a solution to Anakin's biggest problem, which is Anakin is afraid of losing Padme the way he lost his mother, and Palpatine flat out tells him, yeah, it's possible to learn this, not from a Jedi. Come follow me to the stall. No Jedi got to know about it, just between us two dudes. Duking it out. I watched you grow up, Annie. Remember? Bend over now. I've been sending you signals for like 20 years. How have you not realized this? We then get to the droid attack in Kashyyyk. Now, I don't really know why Yoda and Chewbacca know each other too well. I don't know if Luke ever talked to Chewbacca and Chewie was like, Yoda? He owes me like $50, man. He just left after he cut the heads off of two dudes who we thought were taking care of us. No one clarified it. We speak in... but I actually think Chewbacca was there because George initially wanted to have... This is another reason of George being a visionary. This is me sucking the ding-dong of George Lucas podcast because I love that man. Side note, Obi-Wan, they just did a truth bomb this year. They did a leak. Something came out this week saying Qui-Gon in Phantom Menace was going to be named Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan was going to be named Qui-Gon, and after Qui-Gon gets killed, Obi-Wan was going to take up his name, but then eventually scrapped it because it made no sense. And that's just the genius of George. He lives within his own universe so much that he can make those decisions, and he can make them because he made those movies. Now, if you're like me, you're the kind of person who theorizes that Luke's green lightsaber crystal came from Qui-Gon's lightsaber and Obi-Wan left it behind in A New Hope, and that's one of the things that he was telling Luke to go out and seek when he was looking for his journal when Boba Fett found out that Luke's last name was Skywalker, henceforth Vader finding out, and then his whole impetus toward the dark side changing. Whatever. We'll get to that in a minute. We're not even on the prequels yet. We're going to do the original trilogy next. God, I love the prequels. I got this. This was the Star Wars I grew up with. This was on the shelves. This is a color-changing Darth Vader blue-bladed lightsaber. Now, you get this on the shelf. This is before PS2s were out. I think San Andreas might have been out. I was definitely saying words that were in San Andreas. But this was like, you walk into Walmart and the whole store was filled with it. Now, did that fill my hole as an adult? I have like, this is not a flex. I have like 5 replica. This is nice. Like, this is legit. It's dead right now, so it's not functioning. Let me see. Wait, I think I might. This is how many I bought. Don't heal your inner child. This is Qui-Gon's. Dead. Just like me inside. Anyway, these, easily the two of them, I probably paid a couple $100 a piece for. This, back in the day, $30 maybe. Maybe 40. Depending on how the Bush administration was palpatining Americans that year. But like, coolest toy ever, coolest movie ever. This is the best movie to watch when you're a kid because you get to understand how a democracy becomes a dictatorship. It's Julius Caesar. It's ethics. It's civics. It's love at its core. It's a love story. This whole movie is Anakin trying to save his wife and wanting to live a normal life on the throne of Coruscant, but he ends up being a manipulated hot dog man in a suit that has is he even really living at this point? We get to the droid attack on the Wookiees, and it was supposed to be Han Solo. That's why I went off on that Obi-Wan tangent. It was supposed to be Han as a kid, but then George decided against it, which makes sense. Like, then I like what they did in Solo with Chewie letting him alive dead and break him out of prison. They showered together. That was cool. It makes Yoda is probably the best jet because Yoda's so palatable, like,
Oh, I will. Good relations with the Wookiees I have.
you know what, Yoda? I bet you do. You do a lot of weird stuff that we question. I don't question you have good relations with the Wookiees. And you have Peter Mayhew. He came back. He was Chewbacca. I don't know who Tarful was in the suit. I think it might have been OJ. Again, every clone in this is CGI. But before we get there, we have the Battle of Kashyyyk. And we also get the last scene of Obi-Wan and Anakin together before Anakin becomes Darth Vader. Anakin's in the dark, Obi-Wan's in the light. Anakin apologizes for being arrogant and not appreciative of Obi-Wan's training. Obi-Wan's sort of taken back by it and tells him he's strong and wise and he's very proud of him. And you know what? Obi-Wan did a pretty good job too, considering he wasn't ready for this job. But Qui-Gon, it was his only option, and he did it out of love for Qui-Gon and developed. They needed to get out of the father-son relationship so they could be brothers, and it's unfortunate this is the last time that they ever talk to each other. Because as soon as he leaves, Anakin goes off and he's like, he's looking at his Game Boy Color, and gets mad at Obi-Wan. We all do it. Looks at Padme and he goes, Obi-Wan was here, huh? Yeah? Fuck did he say? Huh? He said I wear lifts in my shoes? Huh? Did he say I have dreams about my mom? Because I don't. She's dead. And I killed everyone who had something to do with her. Ask the kids. Oh, wait, you can't. They're under the sandbox. But he reveals to Padme that he could save her from her nightmares. She's not creeped out by it. Because let's be honest, if you don't get the ick from a guy committing genocide once, what's a few bad dreams going to do? What's the worst that this guy is going to possibly have happen to you? Anakin's further alienated from the Jedi Council and into Palpatine's arms. You know, it's the wrestling match you never wanted with your uncle or the one you remembered when you were much older. And Anakin's about 24 at this point. He's 24. He's been fighting in a war for 3 years. He lost his arm right before that, and he got married right after that. So, yeah, he's pretty susceptible to grooming, especially if Palpatine had it so Grievous went to Utapau and Obi-Wan had to go all the way over there. So when 66 happens, Anakin's going to be away from him and just not know if Obi-Wan's a traitor or not. Oh, Padme is the key. Losing Obi-Wan would be a huge thing to Anakin too, but Palpatine knows Obi-Wan's going to dog walk Anakin anytime he fights him. So having garrisons of clones like Cody around him is probably the best way to take him out and further drive Anakin to the dark side. Throughout all this, Anakin has growing doubts of the Jedi. They're excluding him from everything, and Palpatine is offering him everything. And he's not the Jedi he should be. One of my favorite lines in that movie. And while Anakin is fighting with the Jedi and himself and this tension he has, Obi-Wan is fighting with Grievous. You can actually see a droid tap Grievous on the shoulder when Obi-Wan does the hello there. That's just how much work these animatronic dudes put into this story, and even if it's CGI, like that doesn't, it takes just as much work to build that as it does a set, as evidenced in this next scene. George, while Obi-Wan's fighting Grievous, a four-armed dude with lightsabers, who I just want to point out, he has the line, "I've been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku." Obi-Wan did train the Jedi who killed Count Dooku, so like, cough, cough, not a flex. General dumbass, like, hello there. Of course I know him. He's me. I taught that little motherfucker how to take off an arm. Asked Darth Maul, taught him the same lesson, cost him a leg. But he died, and then I'll kill him much, much later in a CGI show not viewed by many. But Anakin's growing doubts of the Jedi Council and of the Republic. I mean, Padme brings up the fact that they may be fighting for the wrong side, and their democracy that they once believed in doesn't exist. And Anakin immediately goes tribal brain. He goes, "You sound like a separatist. I'm not hearing this." But he's also kind of sick of people manipulating him because of his relationship with Palpatine, which, of course, that's exactly what Palpatine wants, right? Like, he wants him to be exhausted and tired and invaluable. You can't remove him from the puzzle. Even if Anakin wanted to overthrow him, which at the end he thinks he can't because now he's rendered useless in the suit, but is struggling with his ethics, the Jedi Code, and his loyalty to Palpatine. And that leads him to feel confused. He says he feels lost. He's increasingly confused. He doesn't know who to trust. He doesn't know what to believe anymore. And Obi-Wan finally... Obi-Wan always has the coolest hand-to-hand fights. He took on Jango Fett hand-to-hand, and he took on Grievous, and he kicked him, which is like kicking a Prius. And he learns the best way. The only way to defeat Grievous is through what little bit of him is still man and not machine. He's more machine now than man, twisted and evil. And he has the greatest kill and revenge, in my opinion, where he just gets Grievous to open up and gives him a early Oklahoma City bombing job. And when he tosses it, it's a callback to his first line. Just like the callback of him jumping down to Grievous, "Hello there," is a callback from A New Hope when Anakin takes his hood off and goes, "Hello there." when he shows Luke a lightsaber, Luke goes, "What is it?" "Your father's lightsaber, an elegant weapon for a more civilized age." And when Obi-Wan throws the blaster after he kills Grievous, what does he say? "So uncivilized." Right before everything turns to shit. Anakin is told by the Jedi Council to go to Palpatine and tell him that Obi-Wan is engaged General Grievous and to save the date. And Anakin does it to go play I Spy My Little Eye something Senate. And when he shows up, Palpatine's looking at the Death Star plans when Anakin goes to his office. That's how brazen he was at this point. That's how ready he was for this plan to become enacted. He's looking at the fucking Death Star plans as Anakin walks in. And then he does Groomer 101. "You must break through the fog of lies the Jedi have created around you. Let me know the subtlety. Allow me to show you the subtleties of the Force." Red flag, red flag, red flag. Palpatine tells him he knows the way of the Force because his mentor told him everything he knows about the Force. Even the nature of the dark side. This is a great scene because I always felt like, yes, Palpatine's face gets disfigured after he gets lightning thrown back into it, but his real face is that dark, gravelly. That's his real face, the evil fucked upness, and also the, "I can show you the power of the dark side. Henceforth you shall be known as Darth Vader." Like he just had that one on lock. I actually found out through watching the Revenge of the Sith DVD that they lowered Ian McDiarmid's voice a little bit more, so you got that Sith echo, but that doesn't happen yet. Anakin finds out Palpatine's a Sith Lord, pulls a gat on him. When he pulls the gat, if you look at Palpatine's sleeve, he has his fingers up and ready to go because that's where he keeps his lightsabers. If you watch that Clone Wars episode where he took on Savage Opress and Darth Maul, we know Palpatine has 2 lightsabers, so he had one up his left sleeve ready to go. And or I guess that might have been his right, but when Mace shows up, well, all right, so instead of turning over to the council, he's in his head and telling him, "The Jedi are going to kill me if you don't come save me." Mace Windu says to Anakin once he tells him Palpatine's a Sith Lord, which Windu very loudly was like, "I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi. The dark side of the Force surrounds the Chancellor." Motherfucker, go surround him then. Surround him with some light side. Or do one of these. But they say his lightsaber was made out of cortosis, possibly. So that's why the Jedi weren't able to sense the red kyber crystal. Mace tells Anakin, "If what you told me is true, I will gain your trust." What does that sound like? Sounds like he would have made him a master. But Anakin obviously couldn't because he couldn't he was greedy and he was afraid. And he goes and thwarts the assassination attempt on Palpatine through his eyes. Now, everything Anakin believed is true. I saw Master Windu try to assassinate the Chancellor myself. But did Palpatine throw the fight because he knew Anakin was coming to save him? I don't know, because Anakin is running really fast in one scene and then stops and slow walks. So, it's any man's game. Plus, half of it's CGI Palpatine, which was fine, makes for cool lightsaber stuff, but really takes you out of it. Don't watch that scene close enough, and definitely don't look up the actual stunt choreography between Nick Gillard and Samuel L. Jackson to see what we may not have been robbed of, because it may or may not break your fucking heart. Anyway, Anakin, again, everything that happens, you can sort of pinpoint to Mace here because he's written to be the physical embodiment of the arrogance of the Jedi, the dogmatic narrow view, as Palpatine would refer to them as. So when Anakin sees a defenseless elected official up against the amethyst blade of so-called protectors of the Republic, he gives him a hand job and makes his choice, and now has fulfilled his destiny through the eyes of Palpatine, because he always be seeing shit that he already saw before, and now he's Darth Vader. I say he became Darth Vader when he lost his mother, and he became Darth Vader once he executes this order on the Jedi Temple with the 501st. You got Commander Appo, Shakti, her second death, because she died in Grievous's ship in one deleted scene, because, as I mentioned, she was kidnapped during the Clone Wars. And, sorry, I have to do the hood now because we've reached the sinister part of the film. People always say that Anakin's turn to the dark side happened way too quickly. Okay, you have to figure two things, right? One, this movie could take place over a certain period of time. Maybe I'll be wrong on that, I'm not sure. And also, he just fought a war that he lost his mom on. I stubbed my toe while I took off my beard, and I almost didn't finish recording this podcast. So, maybe give the whiny little bitch a break. And Obi-Wan could have been a little more patient with him. And he was raised by an institution that didn't reward emotions. In fact, it told you to suppress them and let go of them. That's why, say, Yoda's train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose advice is shit. That's why Luke was great in the expanded universe, because he allowed himself to love Mara Jade, because he saw what happens if you repress those emotions. You do what Anakin does in this, which is throw off and kill all of your homies. Over 10,000 Jedi Knights pretty much just wiped. If they're not in the temple, they're out on assignment. They got killed on their day off. And that's got to suck. I don't care how high your midichlorian count is. And following Order 66, the Jedi are all purged from the galaxy, except for the ones that they think of when they're making a new project that takes place between 3 and 4. The clone troopers are all there to pretty much just all wipe them out. And the sequence of them going to different planets is kind of what the opening of this movie was supposed to be. They wanted it so in the Clone Wars, you had a similar action-packed start dialogue, but you would see 7 different planets at 7 different times going through the Clone Wars, and you would see the effect each planet had as a result of the war. But instead, we got this Order 66 montage, one of the coolest parts in the Battlefront game, and one of the hardest parts to watch as a Star Wars fan, especially if you grew up loving Plo Koon like I did. Anakin's attack on the Jedi Temple is him, Darth Vader, right? I don't know if it's true. I'm just going to speculate, based on what I've read on the internet, that Anakin went into that room to save the younglings and was triggered when that kid called him Master Skywalker, because he was reminded of the lies and the treachery the Jedi had sort of foisted on him, and decided to wipe them out in both anger and to spare them from lives of hypocrisy. Don't know if that's me normalizing a school shooter. I think I just read that on a website once, but makes it really beautiful if it does, because that would explain Padme's there's still good in him, right? Obi-Wan has no idea what's going on. He thinks it's just his sect of clone troopers that turned on him, because everything is all about Kenobi. He's the Obi-Wan he cares about. Padme is in crazy distress. Anakin goes and makes a pit stop, and R2's like, he is under a lot of stress. And R2's like, you know who's under a lot of stress? Those kids who he murdered with a lightsaber. Obi-Wan goes back to the temple with Yoda. There's a cool deleted scene where it shows clones dressed up as Jedi. If you play Lego Star Wars, those are the first guys you fight before you have to force your way into the Jedi Temple, breaking and entering. Obi-Wan recalibrates the code that is telling all the Jedi to go back to the temple because the war's over. He recalibrates it to that beautiful message we see in Rebels. Padme essentially has to see for herself what Anakin's become. And I hear, according to Rick McCallum, the ending was, well, before that, she's sitting and watching Palpatine's speech. The attack on my left has left me scarred and deformed, but I assure you, my resolve has never been stronger. And with this new, and in order to ensure security and insinuating stability, the Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire for a safe and secure society. And that's where Padme gets her famous line that goes around every election day. This is where liberty dies, with thunderous applause. Also, again, the only line she has on screen with her soon-to-be adopted baby daddy. And her hair is in the shape of the rebellion crown, right? So it's sort of funny that Leia's inside of there hearing Palpatine spew all this bullshit. Eventually, she goes to Mustafar. Blink and you'll miss it, but you can actually see Obi-Wan stowing away on her ship because she refused to tell him where he was. You could see a CGI Obi-Wan getting up the ramp of her ship. It might be a Nubian. It's the same chrome as it is, so it feels like it's a Naboo ship. It's very royal. It's very regal, like everything Padme has extra. The taxes on Naboo are crazy as shit because prices of eyeliner and hairspray just keep going through the roof. Maybe the Trade Federation had a point. Anyway, Anakin's murdering all the members of the separatist movement. Everybody's gone, and Padme gets there, and originally, I watched a video where Rick McCallum, who was the producer of Star Wars, say that Padme was supposed to show up with a knife behind her back, and then when she finally saw for her own eyes that Anakin had become this person because she didn't want to believe what Obi-Wan had told her, she was going to pull a knife on him and he was going to accidentally kill her, and instead of her dying is sad. But instead, we got this badass duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan, the coolest lightsaber fight scene there is. It's supposed to show Jedi at their might, right? At the same time, we get Yoda and the Emperor, where we see the Emperor's whole ass and his asshole get thrusted over a chair. Maybe that's why he got rid of desks. He had a desk in that scene. Return of the Jedi, no desk. Not because he likes paperwork or anything, just because he doesn't want to go ass up in a fight against a dude this tall. Also, he got race into it when he went, "My little green friend." Yoda was like,
Death of younglings I'm okay with. Draw the line at green, Yoda does.
But Yoda gets his shit rocked and loses anyway. A little bit of a fight in the fandom right now because he lost his lightsaber, and in the new Darth Vader comic series, his lightsaber is in a pot of lightsabers that Mass Amida burns up in a pot of shit to symbolize that the Jedi are all gone. But in the Book of Boba Fett, when we see Luke and Grogu, Luke has Yoda's Shato, which is what they call a tiny lightsaber. So where did he get that from? Did they mess up in the comics? Usually the rule is it's not canon until it's on screen. Into exile, Yoda's got to go because he failed. Obi-Wan did not. He cut Anakin down by about half the man he was. And Padme's dying words are... There's actually dialogue between Obi-Wan and Anakin in that scene that was cut out. But if you watch Hayden Christensen's mouth, you could see his mouth moving. He's going, "Please help me, master." And Obi-Wan sort of refuses and goes, "I'm not your master anymore. You're gone." And that would explain why he picked up his lightsaber. Obi-Wan also knows Padme's pregnant at this point because the last thing he said to her at her apartment when she wouldn't tell him he was on Mustafar was, "Anakin's the father, isn't he?" So that would mean that the most powerful human being on the planet has an offspring. They're going to be strong in the Force. Even Obi-Wan said that in Return of the Jedi, right? So he took his lightsaber probably to give his son because he knew he was going to have to babysit him at some point. After Yoda leaves, he goes to Polis Massa. I'm not sure why, but there's a deleted scene of him talking to Qui-Gon while he's meditating, because the lore used to be that Qui-Gon was studying the living force and was the only Jedi who was so in tune with it that he was able to find life after death, but he couldn't complete his training, so he was never able to be in a physical form. But the Obi-Wan show he was in it at the end, so I was like, "Oh, fuck myself!" Anyway, not that I mind it, I just these are campfire stories, and sometimes I forget which crib notes I'm supposed to bring. The Force does what the Force does. All the Jedi are dead, and so it corrects itself. There's 2 Sith left. Boom, we get Luke and Leia. Uba, uba, uba. Leia gets to live her life as a princess, and Bail goes, "I'll take the girl. I'll take the girl." No debate. Nobody's like, "Hey, why?" Or, "That's weird that you just volunteered to take the girl first. Want to elaborate?" And they just don't even really give a shit about Luke. They're like, "All right, I'll take him back to his family." They weren't doing too well when I heard about them. In fact, the first time I saw him, I called him a pathetic life form. But fuck this kid. I'll watch him for 20 years and then take him to an underage bar. And then the 3PO's last words are the first words in A New Hope. Well, he's the last one to give lines in this, first one to give lines in A New Hope. But it's on Tantive 4. With Captain Antilles, and he gets his memory wiped, so R2 just has to walk around with half a friend his whole life, and it's probably why he's so depressed and quippy, because his buddy's gone. He just had to start over from zero. R2 remembers all of this. Anakin told R2 stay with the ship. Anakin ain't never come back. That's why R2 was up his ass the entire time he was on Luke's ass, while he was on Dagobah, because the last time someone told him to stay with the ship, he never saw that person again. Padme's funeral, she's supposed to be made to look pregnant, so Vader and the Emperor will think that she died pregnant, because Palpatine will be all up on them kids if he found out, hashtag to catch a Palpatine. Ahsoka was at that funeral in that added Tales of the Jedi scene, which just tugs at your heartstring. And the last shot of the movie, the binary sunset, was actually filmed during Attack of the Clones because they didn't want to have to go all the way back to Tunisia to just shoot one scene. And I remember leaving the movies with my parents when I was a kid. And my dad going, "There's just no way that movie could have had a happy ending, could it?" I was like, "Well, Dad, it was called Revenge of the Sith. They don't sound too happy. And also, the happy ending comes in 3 movies. Actually, New Hope. This movie actually kind of ends like Empire Strikes Back, looking out in the sunset. Not sure what the future's going to hold, but someone out there got their hands on it. Wow, I just love this movie, and honestly, it is probably the best prequel. It's definitely the most action-packed. I still love Attack of the Clones, but the beauty and the memes that we got from Revenge of the Sith, this dope-ass robe, I just wear it around the house now. I am the Senate, and I am Commando. And did Sidious take Padme's life force and give it to Vader? Great question. We can't prove it, but it's like the fact that Palpatine was going to admit to Anakin that he was his father because he created him through the Force, and then George decided that would be too much. If you want to believe that he was siphoning the living Force from Padme to Anakin, it would make sense, right? Because he was just telling you, Palpatine had said to Anakin, I have the power to save the ones you love. Is this the power? Is this the cost it comes at? George's whole ethos is sort of, yes, the dark side is more powerful, but it takes more from you. What if that is what ended up killing her? What if Palpatine wasn't lying when he said you killed her? Maybe you're alive because he took her blood. Either way, R2 watched Padme die, and he watched Leia be born and die. So this is all R2's story, and if you ever want me to break down the R2-D2 book I wrote, let me know in the comments. And also let me know any other comments you have about Revenge of the Sith. Everybody loves this movie. I'm going to do way more just lore videos that are a little more like snacks, so you don't have to have me in your ear all day. I love Revenge of the Sith. I love all of the lore that we have in between it now, between Rebels. You have the Dark Lord of the Sith, which is a Legends book, but it's James Lucchino who did Plagueis and Tarkin, so like it's just flying off the pages. That's what I'm reading right now. It is a movie that I can never... It's my comfort movie, which is probably the most telling thing about me and my broken personality. But it also should be a cautionary tale to be like, okay, yeah, maybe going to the gym isn't the best solution to the breakup. But I don't know. That's just how I see it. And you had to hear me talk about it. And I hope you'll listen to more, because our next episode is where it all began. Star Wars. I'm not calling it A New Hope. Star Wars. It was called Star... In Mama name of Star Wars, I'm going to call him Star Wars. Star Wars is our next episode. I'm working my ass off. Look at this. No ass left. You can't even see the ass. I have none left to get these out week to week. I'm sorry. I just love Star Wars so much. I just want to talk about it. I'm never happy with what I put out. But thank you for watching. And if you have a problem or if I was wrong about anything, let me know in the comments. But also remember, everything I told you was true from a certain point of view.
We got Death Star. 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 We got Death Star.